this stop leak stuff, car radiator, is it like dangerous?
What kind of car you got?
Stop. Yeah.
General Motors has they're little pellets. If you put it in the radiator, you put it in the old floor.
Okay.
They're actually called pellets. And it's like $5-6.
Yeah,
They work really well.
Okay.
You know what they're made out of?
What are they?
Ground walnuts.
Cool. Maybe I should just grind some walnuts. And just make
Well,
a little bit of on it.
General Motors had a problem when they went into production with some of their engines. And they found one of the ways that they would stop leaking, and they would just add these little.
All right, welcome everyone. Are you ready for this?
Almost. Give me another minute.
Should we wait? We can end right there. So,
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, just like some important stuff.
yeah.
No whispering. No staring.
People are creepiest.
Do we really
As
need
good as
this?
October, it doesn't mean we have to be all creepy. Such a weird holiday.
You,
Some days I don't know.
Honest answer.
Oh my God, there's video?
Ah. Wait, can you, oh, you can barely see good. Very good, they can't see.
I'm scared. I don't like when people see me.
No, but
I can say that, but I've been on the internet the last 3 weeks, so it's like pretty much anyone watching us.
my cousin made the front page in the newspaper in the township
I don't want to be no newspaper either.
for
Well, I've
vaping.
already been in the
After with
newspaper.
fans,
Oh.
yeah.
How about now?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah? We can do it?
Sure.
Let's do the, oh, on my computer. Okie dokie. Welcome everyone to our Saturday evening meeting. For those of you who are new, we meet here every other week from 6 to 7:30 p.m. On Saturday, of course. During the first 45 minutes or so, we will generally have the speaker discuss the week's topic, and then there will be open discussion for the remainder. Everyone is encouraged to bring any resources, experience, or knowledge they may have to share. The success of this group depends heavily on participation. Our mission is to provide resources and support to all members of the transgender community, building relationships through fellowship and understanding. There is no fee for your participation. We ask only that you give what you can. Diane, can you finish passing that around? And if you cannot give, please come anyway. We have refreshments and information on the side table. Sorry, hon. And I'm going to have something I'm going to pass around tonight as well. So please help yourself to those things. Tonight we are going to talk about detransitioning. But before we start, let's take a moment to go around and introduce ourselves. If you have preferred pronouns, be sure to mention those as well. I will start. My name is Brianna, and I'm a girl, so call me girl stuff.
I'm Diane, female pronouns. Jamie, female pronouns. Liz, she, her.
Amy, no preference?
I'm Max. I'm a dude.
Kate, she, her pronouns.
All right. Okay, so this week I made an appointment at a clinic called Christina Clinic. Have you ever heard of Christina Clinic? Max.
What? I don't.
Hello, screen. This is a little fun. It is an electrolysis place, and I know we've had plenty of discussion here before on this, but since it was someplace new, I thought I'd pass this around really, really quick. It is in St. Paul, technically. It's off of Snelling, so it's kind of like just barely. It's like it's the northern part of Snelling and St. Paul. So anyway, all the information is on here. So it says North Lexington, so I guess it's a couple blocks south of Snelling. Oh, and it actually says Roseville, so I was wrong. So it's definitely not St. Paul, because it is a little bit too far north to be considered St. Paul. But anyway, a very professional place, very comfortable, I think, for anybody who's transgender. But one thing I didn't love is that they basically try to get you to buy packages, which I ran into before. And otherwise, so it's a little more expensive if you pay time by time. And I definitely get charged less by going to that place off of France. Skinnovation Med Spa. Plus, if you don't be transgender, they give you a discount. So that's far better. However, Skinnovations only does laser, and I was hoping that my face would be ready for electrolysis because I've been doing laser for so long, and I've gone back and forth one other time as well, and sure enough, they said, we don't recommend electrolysis yet, that you should still do laser. So that's the main reason I actually didn't go with them, is because I can get laser hair treatment from Skinnovations, from somebody that I know very well and gets a good deal. So they do both here. There's a pamphlet on each. I'll pass it around quickly, or someone can take it if they need. I can get more. But yeah, they offer both, which is kind of nice. Roseville, which is better for those of us who live a little bit farther north. And like I said, I felt very comfortable there. So that's that. All right. Anybody else have anything that they want to share as far as resources or information before we get started?
I could, Marcy Bowers recommended for voice therapy. It's Thompson in Oakland. I'll bring the information in our next meeting. I did download the website and got some information off of there that I'll bring next time. Just for those who want to have the surgery, I'm considering it. My kids are having a real hard time with my voice, and same with my wife, especially in public. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. And it would be a great topic if you could get it done. You can talk about experience with all that and stuff like that. So awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we will get right into it. Detransitioning is kind of a sensitive topic, but one that I feel like is worth a little bit of time here in our group. We've only had one experience, I guess you could say, with somebody who may or may not be, we don't really know, I guess. Maybe somebody knows, but anyway, detransitioning is a thing that happens. It's not always the right thing to do, it's not always the wrong thing to do, but the thing that I think is most worth stressing is that it should be something that should be left up to the individual, and I don't want this group to try to influence people one way or the other. You know, I want us all to be here and support each other, and all of those things. So I don't want anyone ever leaving this group and feeling like, oh, I really don't feel like I would be welcomed there if I ever decided to detransition, or if I was simply going to the group and hadn't transitioned yet and had changed my mind. So I guess that's one thing that I kind of wanted to reiterate to the group is that, you know, I do want everyone to feel welcome here. And there are a lot, and I did a little bit of research on this today, there are a lot of videos on YouTube about people discussing detransitioning and the backlash that they got from their own community. And so I would never want someone to leave this room and have a similar experience there. It's not for everyone. It may be for every single person in this room, or most of us, but it's fine if it wasn't. And I want us all to support each other as much as possible. So anyway, and I gotta find out where I left off because I didn't actually read my own stuff. Okay, so, all right, so the paper and the pens are there for if you want to share later or just write down some thoughts or ideas. I have two separate questions that I'd like you to write down and maybe think about, and we can talk about later if you so choose. The first one is, have you ever thought about detransitioning? If so, why and to what end? The second question is, do you know someone who has detransitioned or is/has considered it? If so, did they say why? How is their life now? This, of course, is an anonymous meeting, so try not to use names and things like that as much as possible if you do share any of that information. But those are the two questions that I would like to possibly discuss later on in the meeting. Try and be specific on your list of reasons, examples such as cost, family, passability, etc. We have, which part? Sorry.
All of that, the cost, the family, the.
Yeah, well, you know, all the main reasons that maybe we thought about not transitioning in the first place could also be reasons why people decide to transition or detransition later on. Obviously, the only reason that I would hope to find for myself to detransition is that I realized that I wasn't female or that I was gender fluid or another actual reason versus outside elements pressuring me to detransition. Does that make sense? Does anyone have anything else that they want to say about that? I mean, is there really any other good reason to detransition outside of the actual realization that you're not transgender?
Good reason? No.
Right.
But
However,
people will make anything be a good reason if it affects them enough.
yeah. And there are a lot of things that are difficult about transition, especially cost and family, that people, you know, do need to take into account when they transition. And transition is different for everybody, of course, as we've talked about many times before. So anyway, so that's that. I have a video. Is it ready, Liz? About somebody who just kind of talks about detransitioning really quick. She didn't detransition, but I thought it's something that was short and good that we could watch tonight. A lot of things that I did look at were really long and kind of got off topic a lot, and you know, you got to wade through YouTube a little bit. So this one I kind of liked, so I thought it was worth watching because it was only like 3.5 minutes long or something like that.
Hi guys, it's Maya here, and I wanted to thank you for watching this detransitioning / androgyny video that I made. And my reason for making this video wasn't to say that I'm detransitioning in any way. I've never been happier as who I am today, having started my transition and having been well into it. It's been an amazing experience. I just made this video because I know that there's a lot of fear within people who are considering transitioning, because we've been presented with this linear idea that we're going from point A to point B, and that once we transition, we're kind of trapped. We can't ever go back. And I had that fear as well before I transitioned or started transitioning. And I think it's important to note that if you are ever uncomfortable during your transition, or if you don't find happiness throughout the transition, you can always detransition, or you can be gender fluid and be in between the genders. There's just so many different outcomes. Gender isn't just a binary system. It's very broad and diverse. And so I think it's important to note that masculinity and femininity can often be intertwined. And so I made this video to kind of be a message that it's okay to transition, it's okay to detransition, it's okay to be somewhere in between, it doesn't matter. So I hope you guys enjoyed this and found it interesting, and yeah, I will see you guys next time. Have a great day.
Thank you, Liz. So not very in-depth, but just a couple of really good points I thought that she made there. A couple other little questions that aren't necessarily questions that I'm expecting answers for, but that I wanted to bring out is, what does everyone think about the emerging concept of gender fluidity? Has this outbreak of information on our ever-widening gender spectrum saved us from some stress? When someone doesn't identify as a girl but isn't sure they are male either, is it becoming more acceptable to be neither? Maybe this will decrease the number of folks transitioning, and more importantly, the number of us who decide to detransition. Cultural awareness is no guarantee that things will get better for our community overnight. Some things that I have heard about trans folks is that we are destroying gender altogether. Adding more space between the binary confuses people. Confused people get scared, then mad, then dangerous. A lot of people find it excruciatingly painful to have their minds pried open. That is why it is so dangerous for us to expose ourselves. But there is no need to encourage oneself or another to transition simply to belong to something. We all belong, and we all need to be loved and supported. That's why it is so important to me that this group is supportive of others, no matter their decision or if it changes. Going back to the beginning of the paragraph, what does everyone think about the emerging concept of gender fluidity? And what does it have to do with us who are thinking about or are active in a transition where we are defining ourselves as a gender? You don't have to say anything. Nobody has to say anything.
I think there are things to say about it. Like, I don't know if it's a great opening comment just to say that gender fluidity, or gender fluid people, and definitely were reluctant to come out for, because it goes, it's hard for trans people to come out somewhat well defined sort of way societally, and it's been that much harder, and still is. For gender, this is a terrible word, that much harder for gender fluid people to come out, but maybe the bar's been lowered, so that at least people are willing to hear or entertain a conversation about gender fluid. It isn't all out most drastic and drastic things, but anything that's still pretty drastic and talking about. But some I think it's always been there. I'll just take a few minutes to gather my thoughts and gather more thoughts. They're just all over the place right now.
I see that. I don't know many people who go from stating that they're trans to gender fluid. I thought often also goes along with detransitioning, because usually when people are gender fluid, they do tend to, often they do tend to push towards one side, so sometimes you don't even know about the gender fluid thing, except for maybe how the drugstore or how to watch the health. And so I think that people who are somewhere in the non-binary range often do transition. And usually it's just more towards one side or the other. And so in most cases, I'm not sure how often that detransition would be part of it. Because I think the ones who are more comfortable in the side that they were born anyway and just wanted to add an element will do that. The ones who are closer to the other side probably go through a traditional transition first, and then just start adding other elements. So I'm not really sure how much of that really affects how much people detransition itself.
we talked a little bit the other day about some of your friends who don't have a real desire to transition, and maybe were concerned about even your decision to transition because of the maybe unnecessary difficulties that they saw it posing in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, just going back to that conversation and things that I've heard about, well, just sort of warnings or sort of scare language around, yeah, things being irreversible and trans people as a population is like having the highest suicide rate of anybody out there without really offering up a fair comparison of a control group where you compare trans people to suicide rates. But yeah, maybe what I've heard as warnings from part-timers or cross-dressers, because I think these are the people I'm talking about, people who I still consider to be good friends, despite the scare language. What are they warning me about? Well, maybe they're associating their own experience and saying, well, I'm expressing my feminine side, which is genuine to me and an authentic part of me, but I'm not going to go there in terms of socially transitioning, medically transitioning, and putting myself into the world, into mainstream society, into my family network or fabric, saying, well, this I've got a transition. They seem to have resolved not to, and maybe I like this is the kind of thing I like to comment on. Drafting it
to you,
4 times.
Just gather your thoughts for a minute.
Take a walk around the block. Like just talking off.
We had a person
here
that came here, gave our group a try for a couple of times, and they pulled me aside and said that they really wanted to thank our group, but they decided that they're not going to go all the way through with it, and they're got to go back to their therapist and figure out who they really are. Because I mentioned to the person, you can come any way you'd like. It was one of the first times she actually wore a skirt out in public. And she mentioned that, and at the end of the evening, she just says that this wasn't for her. She thinks she's just a closet cross-dresser and wants to wear stuff at home, but not really go out and be out, or this ain't a part of her as of now. And I said, well, we're here if you need to come back, or if you want to come back. And I haven't seen that person since. So, I mean, it's out there, we have it here.
A group like this and the conversations we have can be revealing, or a light turned on in a dark room, so to speak. If somebody comes in here with no idea, or very little idea where their gender identity sits, then by having conversations with us, listening to what we talk about, that informs them in a way that they haven't been informed before. And maybe for that person, they felt compelled somehow to say, well, I've got to say, I've got to posit the hypothesis that I'm on the track to transition. I don't know that that's sure, but I'm gonna run with that. Just to switch from the highly technical to the sports analogy. I'm gonna run with it and see. Run with it, run with it, and feel well. Transition isn't the track. And I can see, but in principle, how
You know, like I said, you know, they can go slow, they can still come here. And I haven't seen the person since, so I mean, it was just one of those things that, you know, there's not a safer place a person can be than here with us.
Well, that's the hope, you know, and if we can do nothing else as a group, I would want to be able to push someone in the right direction.
Yeah.
Not in our direction, not in their parents' direction, not in their friends' direction. And then, you know, and I guess that's the point that I'm getting at, and I think that you were trying to figure that too, you know, and any group of cross-dressers probably has one person in it that is transgender, and they just don't want to lose their family.
Nice as well.
And they're just, that's enough right there for them to say, yes, I'm transgender, I'm going to be a cross-dresser because I don't want to lose my family, and I can totally relate to that. I can totally relate to that. But maybe that person comes to this group one time and hears someone else's story, preferably not mine because it's terrible, about a family situation that turned around and gives them hope and says, then maybe I could transition because I really do think I'm transgender. If we can do nothing else as this group, we can maybe have one person leave here and make the right decision for themselves because we give them a little strength and hope.
And we may or may not know. We might have done that already to a few people, but we will never absolutely know unless they come forward and said, you know, you helped me one way or another, 100%. As far as your question you asked earlier,
Yeah, we can go back to the questions that I did pose. No, that's fine with me, unless someone else has something to say about the gender spectrum.
One thing I was going to say,
Yeah, go ahead.
with the gender spectrum is I guess I still wonder if in my other group we have a person right now that is having a heck of a time with coming to group because they see everybody else so far along, and this person even said they're not going to transition, so they don't feel like they belong in the group. But yet, I guess the thing I've been wondering, you know, going back years ago, you had your different categories. You know, like you had the crossdresser, the transvestite, the transsexual, and I mean, even like I said, when I was kind of not paying attention to a lot of this for a long time, when I came back to it, all of a sudden everything was under the umbrella of transgender. And I even noticed in my group they talk about we have a transgender group, but everybody that actually is there is actually transitioning. So then anybody that comes into that group that's not transitioning almost seems to feel like they don't belong there. And I'm wondering, are people getting confused now, thinking that to be transgender means you have to transition? Yeah. Just because it's under that umbrella. Yeah. You know, I mean, I know they talk, you know, a lot of times they try talking about the spectrum, but I also see them getting the feeling from people, they think, well, there's only, you know, this or this, because transgender, there's no segments in it anymore, even though they say it's a continual spectrum, but they seem to get in their head right away, I have to go full time. You know, that's what I'm running into different people. It kind of confuses me. I mean, I feel sorry for them because it's like, no, they know what you want. You know, you're still part of the community.
I think like in mainstream or in the media, the way the voice now for the first time ever the voices that you hear from the trans community are trans people who are transitioning and you hear the success stories and hear enough of them it sounds like maybe to sort of uninitiated that everybody is or has to be on track to transition unless they really make a strong case for not doing that. I've gotten that sense talking to cross-dressers or part-timers or not. Don't even know if there's like a non trans category anymore. I think such a thing existed in the late 80s or early 90s. But, I know when I am in a group having that conversation that I like to say, speak up and say, you don't transition, because I've never I don't like the person who seems to suggest by example that that's the beyond. given that impression to one or two people.
Do you think that some of that, I guess, came about because, you know, just the term transgender was grouped everybody into that one, and everybody got away from the individual labels? I mean, because I'm talking about people that, you know, I'm thinking about some people who didn't even, I want to say it, back when there were individual labels, they never researched that, so they don't know them. So now when they research, everything just comes out transgender. You know, and they think right away, you know, what appears to be, like you said, the most out there is people that have fully transitioned.
Right, maybe that's the downside to, terms, yeah, right, yeah, the, like, fornication, defornication, like, yeah, transsexuals, transvestites, yeah, groups, yeah, distinct groups, yeah, it became, like, yeah.
I mean, it's just a thought that I
get you're right.
that, you know, but the same way people who are now coming out and exploring that I hear from, it just sounds like they don't realize that there's different areas they can fall into. Right. You know, I mean, actually, I feel sorry for them. I feel bad because it's like, no, it isn't, you gotta be all the way to this and or all the way to this. You can fall anywhere in between. Nobody's telling them that. You know, or they're telling them not to.
Maybe we don't enough, maybe we're not, because this group is focused on actual transition issues. Is that giving us too narrow of a approach to things? But the actual transition is more work than anything else, quite frankly. You're not doing a physical transition, there are so many less activities that you need to do, money and otherwise. You know what I mean? I mean, like, you don't have to be on hormones. You don't have to pay for hormones. You don't have to pay for laser. You don't have to pay for electrolysis. You don't have to pay for, what's it called? No, their thing. Binders.
Binders. Oh.
You don't have to pay for binders. You don't. You know what I mean? Like that it's. I'm not saying that we have to decide the vision of the group right now or anything. I don't want people to come here and think, well, since we're not transitioning, I'm not welcome. But a lot of our topics will be focused on that, and there's nothing wrong with that either. I don't think. But
Let me give you my perception. Originally, I came here to be here for Max, but I have always questioned my own self and have stop over here, smile, and have found out a lot more about myself being here. And it's never geared towards anything specific. I don't think that changing the dynamic of the group would be necessary, because if someone comes to a group like this, they're going to take away what they need to take away. I don't think that a change would need to happen. And that's just my perception from where I am.
I think if somebody is interested in not pursuing medical changes, this would help convince them over. You just hearing about those things would give them more insight into whether that's their decision or not. So even if they realize that, oh, I really don't want to do that, then it's still something.
Right.
And I agree with that it can help them determine, you know, if they medically don't want to transition. But I guess part of going back to what I always was thinking is to confuse them thinking that, okay, now I must really have something wrong with me because I don't want to fully transition. And I just wonder if they get it in their head, like I said, you either have to be male or female, period.
I think society does such a good job of that already that we're not going to make it worse.
You know, I don't think we have to change anything. I'm just saying it's coming part of it from the media and how the terms are being used. And it's a personal thing with me, you know. I don't know whether people define it, you know, how they look at it.
And then you got my family, they think that my therapist pushed me into it. You know, they really think that they didn't try to talk me out of it at all. They just, yep, this is who you are and this is where you're going, you know. They don't realize that a lot of the things that I'm going there is because I have this drive inside that you just can't explain. And other people think it's easy, and I go, I wish this on nobody. I mean, people don't understand all the things you go through, the loss of family, the loss of friends, the loss of, you know, the hardships. It's like everywhere you turn around, there's really not a lot of positives other than the big positive is the internal feeling. Be able to sleep at night, the calmness that you have about yourself. That's the way I feel. But as far as a lot of the other stuff goes, getting back to your question, have I thought of detransitioning? Yes. A lot of times. Over and over again.
And I think most of the time.
You know?
How much does the group think that, and I'll go on my own perception of this or my own experience with this, and then we can talk a little bit more about this too. Hormones. How much do actually going on hormones and giving them a chance help a person decide on whether they're actually transgender or not? And is that a dangerous thing to do? Now, the reason I say this is because for me, going on hormone replacement therapy actually is what really made me 100% sure. And I think that had that been the wrong thing for me, going on hormones would have made me realize maybe I am just a cross-dresser. You know? But when my sex drive changed, and I don't mean like necessarily wanting to hump people, but like just like the way my body reacted to things, okay? Doesn't have anything to do with who I was attracted to or what I wanted to do to them. Just in general, how it made my body feel. And growing breasts. I've never been a big boob person, but suddenly not having to wear breast forms to make myself look feminine was like, and we talked about this the other day too. When we had coffee time at Annalise. I'm gonna do it too. Remembers me for my tattoos apparently.
Not for your boobs?
Maybe.
Or maybe he does, he just didn't say it.
Yeah, just anyway.
We can be silly from time to time.
Yeah, and we should, because this is a heavy subject. That really was big to me. I suddenly was like, I don't care how big they get, but this feels right, you know? And then it goes on to like the next thing of like, I'm tired of sitting on my junk. I really want to have surgery. Like, I don't want to sit on my junk for the rest of my life. Like, that sucks. That's uncomfortable. I don't like it. Granted, there's much less sensitivity on there than there was before I went on hormones, so it's easier to sit on one's junk. But it's never going to be like, happy, joy, fun time, you know?
Well, and now you're so comfortable in this feminine body, and tell me if I'm wrong, but if you put on a mini skirt, that could be a very rude awakening for you if you bend over wrong.
Yeah. And it's all-
And be cold.
Liz, what did Marcy Bowers tell you? They're sick.
Come on. It was something, essentially, because I was asking her about why not get surgery, said, because you gotta plug your face when you get out of the shower, don't you want, I can't remember exactly the words, but
Something
like,
dangling.
get rid of that unsightly wang. No, she didn't say that, but it was something along,
It was unsightly.
it was
Maybe
like
hanging
something like
between your legs.
that. Yeah, but don't you want that to look more congruent with your face? Like, yeah, but I don't know if it's worth a major surgery to change that.
Did that make you feel less? This is actually a serious question. I'm sorry about seriousness. Did that make you feel like less trans in any way? Like, 'cause I guess I personally wouldn't, as a doctor, as a friend, or anything otherwise, and nothing against Marcy because I love Marcy, but like, did that make you at all be like suddenly questionable about your transness?
No, not at all.
It did. That's good. That shows where you're at, which is good. A good place, I think.
Because I mean, there's so many, so if you think about it, she does 250 surgeries per year. Let's say there's 5 other ones. That means that for the whole country, that if there's five renowned surgeons doing that much surgery, then we're covering 1,250 people a year out of a population somewhere that's been either estimated at 750,000 or 1.25 million people. So obviously they're only making a small dent in the number of trans people. So obviously most people are getting by without surgery. That doesn't mean that everyone's happy without it, some people definitely are. Some people don't even want to consider it. Some people just can't because of either medical reasons or financial reasons. And there's probably someone like me who would think like, it'd be an upgrade, but I just don't know if it's really worth it. And I was surprised that she had that attitude towards it. That she wasn't more in line with the idea that this is only for some trans people, only some trans people will want to pursue this, especially given the limited resources that are available to trans people, considering the small number of surgeons available.
Well, she said that though in her presentation, that 80% don't.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure why she thought it was exceptional that I would.
Well, she didn't want you just to drop. She wanted you to push it back. If you weren't certain, she says, you got a year, right? Wait 6 months and then decide if you really don't want it, push back. I think she just didn't want you to take your turn and just wipe it off and then have to start everything over.
And then she's like, could have been a concern is that she didn't want me to do like just a rash decision to have my name taken off the list and then realize like, oh no, I do want that. And then now it takes 3 years to get back in.
And that's what I think she was looking at, because she said, why don't you wait until 6-8 months from now, when you get a little closer, and we can always push it back.
Of course, even if I do it, though, then someone else gets to come in earlier, and really from the standpoint, there's nothing exceptional about me. There's no reason I should get it before anyone else. So I'm not sure why she was pushing me to do that. So
Well, then yes, the question too, can I give my date to somebody else?
I asked her that, and she said, yeah, and she said no. I didn't think she would have done that.
Well, that gets into the underground stuff then, because other people would start putting it on there just so they could sell it.
Right.
Hey, for $2,000, I can have you, I'm up and, you know.
Line readers, professional line readers.
Right.
The bottom surgery.
Research.
That's a,
An evening with Dr. Powers.
that can mean so many things.
I can't remember what we're talking about.
So Diane, going back to your answer for the first question, have you ever thought about detransitioning? All questions, if so, why, and to what end?
Why
Do you have that?
would be my family, would be number one. My family and their friends, the loss. Before I came out full-time, even when I was just part-time, and I would still go out quite a bit female, if we were going out with their friends and I would ask them, how would you like me to present myself that night? And a lot of times they just say, most of the time they say, could you present male? And we still got invited out. So most of the time, our evenings were spent with them and their friends and, you know, getting to just go out and socializing. But since I transitioned, we are no longer invited out anywhere. My wife gets invited out if I have a meeting like tonight, or if I have therapy that night and they're going out with some friends, my wife will be invited. So it's pretty poignant, or pretty obvious to me on what's going on. And one of the hard things, again, my family has a hard time issuing is passing. This cat came up last Sunday. I had a great time with my brother. The first time I actually got to spend some time as Diane with my brother. And my wife was there, my oldest daughter was there with little Logan was there, and the two little kids played. And I helped my brother work on some stuff around the house, which ended up to be a fantastic day. But on the way home, we stopped at Walmart, and then afterwards dinner was getting late. So I just went into Applebee's. Well, Logan was having a nap in the car, so we got him up from that, so he's kind of crabby and cranky anyway. And as we walked in, everybody was kind of looking at us, and my wife didn't take it, they were looking at the kid, they were looking at me. And I got up a couple of times to walk the baby around, and she goes, everybody was staring at me the whole time. And just before we entered the door, of course, it was the comment, Dad, feminine voice, feminine voice. So they're both having a real struggle, and there was nobody we knew in Applebee's. But they're still struggling with the perception of everybody thinks that I'm male, that I'm not passing well. And that conversation went on that night. So what turned out to be a really great day ended up turning out to be a very bad day. And it led into a bad week. So between my family and the friends, passing in public, my voice, and I know the reason I'm not changing much, and like you said, when you get on the hormones, I felt wonderful. But the limited amount and when it stopped was really quick, and a lot of that was due to my age, according to Phelps. That even with higher doses is not producing anymore. And I'll never have hair on the top of my head. I'm pretty bald. So I'll always wear a wig. My face is not going to change a whole lot. I've seen a couple other surgeons locally here. So this is pretty much who I'm going to be the rest of my life. So my passing ability is not really that great. My kids are having problems. My wife's having problems, and it's leading to marital issues. Sounds like a blast, huh? But at the same question, there's also a no. I like feeling female. I like who I am tonight. I like when I go to bed and I sleep peacefully. I like being in a calmness about me that I've never had in my life. So have I thought of detransitioning? Yes. And it was recent.
And how does that change your life for the better? You detransition now.
I don't know. Right now, I'm still female tonight, and I'm going to continue down the road of being female. But I'll always have that question in the back of my mind. I'm also, I think between me and my wife, one of us is just waiting to pull the trigger on the divorce. It seems like it's getting more and more inevitable. If we want to remain together and as good friends, great. But as far as any kind of a relationship, I think. So, I don't know what my future holds, but I do know I have friendships around here. Thanks, Jamie, for listening to me. Thanks. I know you don't feel like you've been a lot of help, but you've been more than you think. So, thanks to the friends in the group that we can rely on. Debbie Downer, Diane Downer, but, that's what's been going on in my world this last week.
Anybody else have their own answer for the first question that they'd like to talk about or share with us?
I thought about detransitioning once, and that was disgusting, and I did not obviously go through with it, because I thought it would just be easier on everyone around me. And I looked at pictures of what I was before then, and I barked internally. Didn't happen. Also, I don't want to be depressing to everyone around me.
Yeah, I think about detransition just from time to time as an abstraction kind of thing, especially from the point of view that the biggest hurdle for me to clear and finally getting the wheels going on the 21-year plan was to finally say, well, this is something that I want to do despite the social ramifications of it, because I think for me the social all right, it's really bothering. Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah. The social transition, the social aspect of transition was the far scarier, potentially more burdensome thing, about transition to me. Medical transition, I think, definitely has its perks, but just the idea of what transitioning would do to my family and friendships, and just day-to-day relationships or relations with people, going to the grocery store, going to the post office, whatever. I think, yeah, that was, the social things were the biggest things for your face. And so I think about that, and I think about how it's largely a social thing and not so much, there isn't so much of a medical imperative for me. And then I think, well, why, again, I'm thinking of abstractions at like, 11:30 p.m. or whatever. Well, why am I going, through all this? I'm not as, I don't know, strident about the medical changes as social changes. So medical consequences as well as social consequences. Because, other trans people do, and have their convictions as to, I don't show as much conviction. But then I stop myself and say, well, it isn't a contest anymore. Like, just because I'm not as affected by the medical choices and impacts doesn't mean that I'm any less trans, that it would be any better for me to just suffer through it and live in the middle role, because there are a lot of times that if I worked inside of the bottom of the just it's not me. Just, so there's so much for my thoughts about detransitioning. Let's first of all, let's have to think about it. The conditions under which I think about detransitioning. Sort of a what if mental exercise when they come to the same conclusion each time, which is that this is it's not for me.
I've go through, before I started especially the medical part of the transition and the social part of it, but there's always that emergency exit button that would be to pull out of it. Like people do use hormones as almost I think it can be used and even prescribed as a means of trying to figure out if you are, because if you take somebody who's sick and put them on what they call cross hormones, they tend to not do very well. They tend to be depressed, and look at a video I saw before we took care of business. And so I always knew that there was an out, that nothing was totally permanent, that you could go pretty far into it and turn around if you thought that you weren't going. I'm not sure if that's the same thing as transition or detransition, because if you're doing these as tentative steps, or even if you're not doing those tentative steps, but you realize along the way that this really wasn't for you, it kind of depends on how far into it you are, whether you consider it to be detransition or just deciding not to transition. But I thought that before going into that, I thought, well, both are possibilities for me. Both not going through with it all or detransitioning afterwards, because you really don't know how it's going to affect you. You don't know how your personal life's going to be. You don't know how your job situation, economic situation, any of those going to be. I think that anyone who says that with complete confidence that they never detransition, probably not thinking of all the possibilities. Now, given that, now that I have what most people consider to be fully transitioned, that to think about that it's not a realistic thing to do anymore. For one of the reasons is I was never really particularly depressed before transitioning, which made me very lucky. But if I were to detransition, I'm sure it would push me into depression. I never considered suicide before, but I could see feeling suicidal if I detransitioned.
Please, going back on your
questions from them you said about the, about hormones helping you make a decision. I guess for me, mine is very similar to yours. That one, I mean, I even fought the hormones from the same thing. I'm always like, okay, once you start taking them, you're on that path, you can't go back. Took me a long time to get that through my head that I can still back up. But once I did start taking them, yes, and it started affirming everything. What I was feeling was right. Everything that changed, slowly started changing. Everything just seemed to fall into place. So for me, that is what made my decision. The whole thing with for me, I'm not going to say detransition, but stopping my transition. I'll be real honest, I've been fighting with that lately. And it's just because of the multiple things that have been going on. And I've gone through it many times before, but like Kate said, you weigh it out, and you get to the end, it's just like, no, I know I'm doing the right thing. This is just a thought going through my head, but for me, a lot of it, like you said, been multiple things going on. I feel like, for me, I haven't had time to work on my transition. I've been so busy that I don't have this time to keep working on things. I know I'm getting really tired of the electrolysis. I mean, it's not just the electrolysis, what I'm going through electrolysis. I'm just getting burnt out. I'm just getting frustrated. I don't feel like I'm going anywhere. And I guess one of the other big things, like I brought up, it is the passability. When you're older, it's really frustrating. And I guess, again, lately, I just not even looking for it. It's been just kind of popping up in the media everywhere. I keep seeing all these younger people who are transitioning, and it's like, I mean, they're never going to be questioned. Nobody's ever going to question, and it's so frustrating on my end. And actually, the thing that really topped me off, that frustrated me, was I had to renew my driver's license. I got my new driver's license picture, and I looked at it, and it just irritated me. I looked at how much different I looked 4 years ago to now. And I hate to say it, but facially, I thought I looked better 4 years ago. So that bugs me now, Is the change from hormones or whatever? Is it just age? I don't know what it is. But that kind of really threw a monkey wrench in. So I've had that thought, but yet every time I think about it, I go, just like Kate said, I go right back to the same thing. The internal feeling, I don't think I can go back to where I was. I just don't do it. I will figure out a way to deal with everything else. I'll have to go back to that internal feeling that I fought with most of my life.
Awesome. Amy, even though you're not active in transition, and haven't made a decision from what it sounds like, what are your thoughts about transitioning and detransitioning for yourself coming to this group? And if you thought about it, why and to what end?
Going forward with a transition for me right now isn't something that I feel like I can do. And the biggest reason is my child. We've actually already had a conversation with him, just kind of a, hey, what do you think? And it did not go well, which I was actually a little surprised about. He said he would not like that at all. And that kind of said, okay, hold every thought you have in your mind and wait. And wait to make a decision and figure it out. I mean, I've been in therapy for years for multiple different reasons. Gender dysphoria is one of them. And for me, if I did make that step and that, okay, this is the path I'm on, I'm going to start transitioning, this is what I need for myself, regardless of anybody else, including my child, could I detransition? No. I think it would be a fight or flight mentality. If I threw everything else or to the wayside. Family, friends, all of that, anyone who is non-supportive. Even if I had questions, I don't think I could stop. Like, okay, well, this person doesn't support me. I don't care, it's what I need. When you're stuck, and I'm sure other people have felt similar, where you just feel like you're stuck, it's really hard to care what other people say.
Yes. So, one more question. What, if anything, could this group do to help with somebody who's interested?
My opinion, honestly, I think this group has been probably one of the best things for me, just the way it is. Being able to hear how other people felt growing up, experiences with their families, that for me has been the biggest thing. Those thoughts, those questions. Behaviors as a child that then continued and made more sense as an adult. Those kinds of things have made it a lot easier for me to consider and figure out where I am. And I actually talk about it with my therapist. And my therapist loves that I continue to come.
Wait, you book therapy stuff?
Twice a month. For the last 6 years.
Okay. It's not like you ever leave the house, but okay.
That's why it's hard for me to get days off. So, but for me, I think that that's the biggest thing. Is I think that just the group, the way it is, the way it's set up, the way that conversations get started, and we get into them, we get into conversations and topics and stuff. And I think that that's the best thing for someone who is struggling, like me. So, I like it.
Well, I was just kind of grateful to be seeing what we're getting into the conversations, because I know even when before I started anything, I'm looking online and watching, you always see like these people that are so happy and this and that, and this hunky-dory. When you look at it, especially if they're, which a lot of people are online, are very passive. That's why they're online. They're passive online. But one of the things I guess that also helped me was when I got and started hearing about people's stories and struggles and to see where they're at now. Sometimes, I think as we were alluding to, you see where you're at now and you see this other end, but you don't think you never get there because you don't feel anybody else have to go through the same trench, this mess. Throw all the muck to get there.
Yep.
You get to really get into the conversations and get into them in depth to realize, okay, they have been through. So then they
So for myself, one of the things that, and that just reminded me, I remember this as we were talking, one of the things about when I've never had serious thoughts about detransitioning, and the main reason that I haven't ever had serious thoughts about detransitioning, of course, is the situation that brought me to transition in the first place, which was severe alcoholism and fear of death. So it's kind of hard to be like, well, that would be better. There's no green grass on the other side, just death.
Green grass.
It's kind of hard to be like, oh, that looks nice. It's kind of difficult. And I'm being 100% serious when I say, if every time I think about detransitioning, for even a second, that's what comes into my head. And in a way, that's a good thing, but I would never want anybody else to get to the point of, I could transition, or I guess I could just die. I don't ever want, and I'm sure it'll happen again many times, because that's the way this world is, but it's hard for me even when I think about detransitioning. One thing that I do remind myself of, and one thing that I do when I'm having a tough day with transition, is I try to get out of the present situation. Because generally when we're having a bad day, why are we having a bad day? Because today sucks, right?
Mhm.
Or yesterday, or something current that's going on in our life. Sometimes when we're having a really rough day, it's important and it's helped me to think about what am I going to do tomorrow to make this better, whatever situation I'm in, or what do I really, really want deep down out of life, and how can I get there even though I'm in the situation that I'm in right now. So a lot of times for me, when I think about detransitioning, not only can I think about death and alcoholism, but I can think about like all the things that I truly, to my core, wanted to do with my life and how much easier that will be for me to do being an honest person to myself. And that doesn't just come down to being female. Granted, that's how I see myself. When there's a gender, that whole gender binary thing, which is, or fluidity, all that stuff that's out now, I think is great. It doesn't change my mind about anything. Like I still see myself kind of about 14 feet past where the female line is. But I like the fact that there's people all along these lines, and it's becoming more comfortable for them to stay where they are, instead of being like, oh, I wish I was more like this or over there. Like, to be where you are is important. You know what I mean? And it took a lot for me to be like, not only am I not gay or not bi necessarily or in the middle of the gender line, I'm way over here and that's okay. And that's way away from where I want to be. But that's okay. Thinking about my future and what the things that I want to do, the things that I want to accomplish, what will make me a happy, healthy person require me being female. And so that helps me through the tough days, is being like, today sucks, but these are my goals for tomorrow, and in order to get to those goals, the best thing for me to do is stay the course. Another thing that we haven't talked about a little bit, but you mentioned on, is going to therapy. And once again, I don't think this group should be here to tell people to do something or not do something, but one thing that helped me a lot, especially after starting transition and starting hormone therapy, it was very, very important for me to see a therapist regularly so they could see all the things I was going through, all the symptoms, whatever, and keep a close eye on me. I know there's a lot of talk about people nowadays wanting to be able to get on hormones easier and skip the requirements from therapists and things like that, and that's all good and well. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But for me, in my own transition, I think it was really, really important for the woman to be able to keep an eye on me who was educated in gender studies. And so I hope, just for myself and for people who are like me in the future, that there is an establishment that is helping you get through transition, even if it is making them lots of money, but to make sure that you are on the right track. However, had there been a group like this when I first started thinking about transition, that would have been even more beneficial. But here we are now, making one for other people, and hopefully will be more beneficial even than just going and seeing a therapist one-on-one is, because we're not here to make a profit. We're here to make our lives better and the lives of those who come to this room better, and so on and so forth. That utopian concept is something that I'm really, really serious about, and I hope that we can continue to focus on in the future.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Mention that. Just thought that's kind of funny. What do you think is more, or how did you feel, between when we went to another group? How did you feel when making your decision, which was better, the individual therapist or going to a group setting? Do you think there's any difference in helping you make the decision?
I think they were both important. I didn't like the group setting, but yet looking back, hindsight, it was more beneficial for me because then I met you guys and I saw what transition did to other people and didn't do for other people and things like that. Whereas a therapist, and it kind of depends a little bit on how good the therapist is. Some of the therapists were very helpful one-on-one, and they got a long ways with them, and they helped me with other mental issues that I was having that obviously were linked to gender, but were just issues that I had as a person. And then there were other therapists that just wanted to listen and be like, hey, keep talking. And they wanted to sit there and make money. And And not that they're bad people, their approach was not beneficial for me. And so it can really, really depend on the therapist. I know that's kind of a non-answer, but I think the group format, even if it's not the best group format in the world, like this one, it's still probably the most beneficial because you get to see others like yourself and interact with them. And that setting is, I think, very, very nice, very helpful, very healthy, very beneficial.
I agree with what you're saying. I think both are needed. I think they're both very needed. Because, you have to have an individual to get your own insight and have somebody specifically pointing out certain things about you and stuff. But then you also need that group to be able to see where you're going and what's happening. And, as we said earlier, knowing what muck you have to go through and knowing others have been there.
I found, and it sounds funny, but when I first started going, I thought, just give me the medicine that I need to make my transition. I don't need to really go through therapy. And some of the people in the world right now want it that way. Looking back, the road was hard, but I think it's needed. I feel really uneasy about somebody taking, shall we say, the easier path, because I think in the long run it won't be easier. I think the W path is a good setup because they're watching out for you to take all the steps necessary to make sure who you really are and not shortcut. I really believe that after seeing everybody who's been around and all my friends and also myself, you need that. You need the counseling, you need the bumps in the road, you need to be able to smooth them out with help from friends that are there for you, like groups like this or another group. You also need to have the counselors to help you when you have big issues along the way. I really believe that they can't lower the standards a whole lot because I'm afraid of, and again, people's perception in reality is really different because just this last week, it's being known throughout my plant that it's been over a year now that I've been there. And a couple people mentioned to other people that couldn't believe that I really gone that far and that I've gone through it, that they thought for sure it would just be a phase because I wanted to use the women's bathroom. It sounds stupid, but that being said, one of them actually started talking to me this week. It's like she hasn't talked to me for a year, over a year. And all of a sudden she said, "Have a good night." And I just thought, where'd that come from? And then earlier in the week, she came by and I needed something from the line and she goes, "What do you need?" And, "Oh, I'll help you." I almost fell over, because she wouldn't look at me, she wouldn't talk to me, nothing. It was like ice there. And suddenly she's realizing that I'm not going back. This is who I am. She's actually starting to communicate and nicely. So, all the perceptions out there, are not good for us. But on the other hand, truth will come out. They'll find out who we really are. We're just people trying to figure out our own way.
I got a question. You look like a jump. Okay, so here's my question. I used to see a therapist in Austin, Minnesota, who was actually licensed in gender studies. When I moved back here, I couldn't find one that didn't have like a year and a half long waiting list. That was the type of therapist I preferred. I now have been seeing this therapist for a little over a year and I really like her. She's very friendly to the situations and very helpful. But my question to all of you ladies, and Max, if you have any input, I'll obviously take your input as well. Do you think that seeing a gender studies therapist for a person like me is more beneficial than seeing just a regular therapist?
Probably.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I think it depends on what you want to get out of a therapist. I mean, some therapists are, especially ones who don't specialize in gender issues, are really bad at it. You can usually tell the ones that are good from the ones that are bad. If they're good at it, they don't have to have that as a focus of their studies, because you can pick up that stuff
Right,
afterwards.
and I mean, she is very, friendly is probably a bad word to use, but she's more than willing to talk. She's always willing to do research for me, help me out. We touch on lots of different topics.
Do you feel comfortable with your therapist?
Absolutely.
I would say,
Because I would ask them the question you asked us.
yeah, that would be another good point. I've gotten rid of a therapist.
I've gotten rid of two.
One left me, and I had a hard time. And then I was assigned to somebody who I really didn't want, because she could put me in. And after just a few times, I just went, this ain't working. We just didn't connect. We had clashing issues.
I've discovered I cannot see a male therapist.
And
That can be things.
other than that, I think if you really like this one, I mean, they could still refer you if you wanted to, let's just say something changed in your life and you decided to move forward or whatever way you want to go. They probably could still refer you to another doctor.
Yeah.
So, that being said, I think I would stick with the one you're most comfortable with. But you could ask your therapist now the same question.
And you've been to a gender therapist before that you like,
Yes.
and you've been to this one, so it's not like you don't know what a gender therapist would do.
Right.
So I think you probably have enough basis to decide whether you think that she's sufficient or not.
I was gonna say, I think you said some key things there though that make a lot of sense to me. Is one, you feel you're able to talk, you feel comfortable. The big thing I heard you say that I think is really important in a therapist is we're saying that she's willing to research things. And to me, that's huge, that if you have a therapist who is willing, even though they don't know something, they're willing to look into it, or, advise you to another therapist or something. And I think that's huge. Instead of having, I know people have gone to some other therapists and they love the therapist. The therapist is great. But the reason is the therapist never challenges.
I get homework.
See, and I get homework.
I love getting homework,
But
actually.
see, and I hate homework.
Oh,
But-
see, I actually love getting the homework because it's helping me take what I'm accomplishing there in just even my daily life and transferring it into, or what I'm accomplishing there in session and taking it into my daily life. My relationships at work, my relationships at home. I'm doing and accomplishing so much more and getting to be a better me.
Well, then that's working for you.
Honestly, to me, it sounds like you actually have a good therapist that works on you.
Perfectly.
Yeah, I'll continue asking her very open, honest questions.
Where I have problems with therapists, sorry to interrupt. My wife's seen a few of them, even down at the Mayo and stuff, and most of them blame her health issues on me. That they convince the best thing for her to do is to distance herself from me, because I'm the reason her fibromyalgia is flaring up. I'm the reason she feels bad. I'm the reason she's always tired. I'm the reason. So, unless if they have any, workings with transgender people, I think that's just the easy out for them. And saying that your issues are caused because of me, and I'm thinking it's one of the reasons she's having a harder time accepting me, and that's when I think that it's kind of coming out. It's just the therapist she's gone to says it's better.
Max, your transgenderness affects my fibromyalgia. I'm sorry, I have fibromyalgia and I just can't wrap my head around that one.
Because it's the nerves, you know, being more,
I know.
especially at work.
So to wrap up the therapist thing, and I didn't mean to like bring it out and make it a big topic, but at the same time, I think it's really, really important that we talk about it more. But one more thing that I will say about it is you have to go with your gut. And you can't just base whether or not you go on a therapist where they say the things that you like and they ask you to do the things that you want to do. And I'll give an example. I have two examples. I've been through a lot more therapists than there are people at this table. I had a therapist not too long after I moved to the metro area that had brought up to me that they thought that maybe I should look into taking testosterone to get rid of the girl feelings. And my reaction was very defensive. And that actually surprised me because really my entire life I always wanted to be a boy. I just didn't feel like I was one. But my gut like turned. It turned. I mean, I could feel like this nasty feeling in me and I knew it was wrong. I knew it was the wrong answer. I never went and saw her again. Not because it wasn't something I didn't want to do, but because I could tell that that was not going to be the answer. Now, years later, when I actually was ready to start hormone replacement therapy, they checked my testosterone and it was at a normal level for a guy anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, it fell very quickly after I started on Spiro, but nonetheless, it wasn't like I was testosterone deficient.
Yeah.
I had plenty of this stuff. It just didn't give me a comfort. My body just didn't like it. Fast forward to years later, right before I got these tests done, a therapist at the U of M, and he was a very direct, actually a very direct guy. And my very first time that I ever saw him, he goes, "When do you want to start hormones?" And I'm like, fear crept into my life, even though I've been thinking about it for years about how that might be a good plan for me. Fear and sheer terror gripped my mind, but I knew it was the right thing. And I came back 2 weeks later and I had already come out to my parents over the phone when he said, "Try writing a couple of letters and we'll go from there." I knew it was the right thing. I knew it was the right time. The thing that I want to point out about that is just because I wanted to be a boy didn't mean that it felt right. And just because I didn't want to come out to my parents didn't mean that that felt wrong. So you have to listen to your gut. You have to listen to your heart sometimes. So I think we all need to consider that when we're going to therapists, when we're talking with friends, when we're talking with family. How is it making your gut feel? You know, is it making it feel wrong? Are you just trying to make them happy? In the end, in future time, like I talked earlier, it's going to be bad for us. So anyway, quickly, because it's time to go pretty soon here. But the second question: does anybody know someone who has detransitioned, has thought about it, and does anyone have anything to say about that situation? Go ahead.
Yeah, there's, but I don't know her personally, but I've read a lot of material, and she's someone that I know from Twitter and other places. And she detransitioned, she transitioned. She hadn't gone through much of the medical part of it, but she had transitioned socially. She happened to live in Minneapolis at the time. She doesn't live now. And she warns people all the time, never detransition, because it was very counterproductive. And it made things much, I don't remember exactly what she said about it. But she said it made things worse in the end, because then it became even more difficult to transition the next time. And it gave people the wrong idea about whether or not she was serious about it. But it made her even more depressed than she was before. That the detransitioning was worse than the transition. Of course, she didn't know that until she had done it. So she warns people really not to do it. And and I think it's quite kind of important to bring this up since especially since it's almost over, that when we talk about detransition, we're talking about these reasons where we think someone may not be trans, or they may find that out pretty early into the transition, or more often it's because of social reasons. And one of the reasons I want to separate that, realizing you're not trans and then not going through with it, is that there is kind of a trope of people who are anti-transgender to use people who have detransitioned as a hammer against trans people. And they try to use it to show that we're not serious about this, that it's just, this is just a whim. This is not something that's innate. This is something that we're just deciding. And it's most often used against allowing transition services for kids. And so a lot of times there's a particular person that gets quoted a lot. There's a doctor who used to be head of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins who was very anti-transgender, and when he moved into the head of psychiatry there, he went in with the purpose of getting rid of their transgender program, and he did. And he's still writing anti-trans stuff. And a lot of the anti-trans articles reference someone named Walt Heyer, and he was somebody transitioned and stayed transitioned for several years, maybe 8 years or something like that, and then detransitioned. And he wasn't actually trans. He had dissociative disorder, and he just got misdiagnosed. And it's always been one of the ways that that people have tried to influence the gatekeeping part of it. Back in the bad old days, you had to go through a lot more. You had to prove a lot more to be able to transition because, well, what if you did and you were wrong? How terrible would that be? But really, I don't know if that's any more terrible than not transitioning for a transgender person. I mean, I can imagine if you're not transgender, you transition, it puts you in a bad spot. Well, we were in a bad spot too before we transitioned. And there's almost a, there seems to be far more concern about having people who aren't transgender transitioning than people who are transgender transitioning. And really, they should be on an almost equal footing because they're both bad things. But to really restrict one in order to try to prevent the other one is pushing the pendulum far too much in the other direction. So we do have to be careful with when we talk about detransitioning what it really means and what it's for. We don't want to perpetrate the negative tropes about it. And really, from someone I don't know besides the one person anyone who has, but I was reading from somebody once who knew several people who had, and were still detransitioned, and every single one of them didn't like it. They felt they had to, they wanted to, but whatever that situation was some type of social or economic reason they pulled out and wished it could be anything but. And if they could fix that, they would transition again. So I mean, really, it's pretty rare actually for people to transition and then have regrets about it. So that's something to keep in mind through all this, is that it generally, if it's actually a trans person, it's going to be usually early transition anyway. The ones who do really don't want to, they just don't feel like they've got any other choice. And then the ones who seem to be complete slip-ups are very, very rare and tend to get very much overemphasized.
Very good. Ending on that. I appreciate it. The other thing is before I came out, a few people at work knew that I was transgender and I'm moving forward. I was handed a copy of the grudge report that also had that person's names in it.
Mm-hmm.
They use it totally against transgender people. The buyer's remorse, I don't care what it is, you're always going to wish you didn't do something in your life. There's going to be something. You didn't wish you didn't make a wrong turn on some street because you had the accident. You're always going to wish something. And it's a percentage game, but they're using the very, very little totally against us.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has a story about, well, I knew somebody. And well, where'd you get that information? Well, I heard it from, or I read it on the internet. you know?
While higher is the great hope for people who want trans people to go away.
Right.
So that, yeah, even if they can't name one other person, yeah, who's, yeah, transition a little.
Hey, do you remember the name of the doctor at CAMH, the one in Toronto, the one that got fired recently? Yeah, it's like that old guy. There's another person who's a little bit like Palm Cube, but he's not quite as bad. But he was the person who attended the gender clinic, the main gender clinic, and I think it's in Toronto. He was in Toronto, and he's had a lot of people thought that his methods were too close to reparative therapy, that they trying to essentially, you know, scare the trans out of you. And he did lots of studies because he worked in a research capacity as well as a clinical one, and published lots of things about kids who were gender nonconforming and how many of them really stayed as transgender through that. And the statistics that he and other people have come up with make it sound like it's only a fraction of people, only a fraction of kids who claim to be trans stay trans throughout their life. But most people who look at the research criticize it for saying that they're looking at just gender nonconformity instead of having the true criteria for being transgender, which is persistent gender dysphoria. If it's something that's transient, if it's something that is not really decided, if they just want to have some things that don't tell them continuously and always that they're the wrong gender, then that doesn't mean that somebody's trans and that they're going to then desist from those feelings later, because probably those people will still have some of those ones. So I know that those ones are also ones to watch out for, that there's a handful of people who want to try to push kids towards staying in their original gender because they consider that to be a better outcome than transitioning. They say, well, transition, there's a lot of medical intervention, and what if you get it wrong and it's terrible? But again, I think that's putting more weight and importance on kids who aren't transgender than those who are. And most people actually disagree with that, and that's one of the reasons he finally got fired, is that most big clinics like the U of M has moved this way, that and most individual therapists in the area, that if people say they're trans, they're trans. You don't get to decide for them if they really are or aren't, and try to steer them away if you think that they aren't, thinking that they'll continue to push until they get it. If not.
Very well done, thank you. In closing, Diane has a question for the group about 2 weeks from now, and then we will disperse and whatnot. It's just that nice date.
2 weeks from now, it's gonna be just before Halloween. So the question is, would the group like to come to my house for our meeting? And then I'll have a bunch of stuff for people, like chicken wings.
Like a party?
Huh?
Like a party?
Yeah.
Bring out and stuff.
I was gonna ask if she wanted to bring things that they didn't bring. And if you would like to bring somebody next, then of course you can bring Amy, and Liz wanted to bring somebody, Brian.
Did you mean Amanda?
Anyone, here would like to bring somebody, or we could have it here,
Like we did
And then-
for 4th of July.
and then I can bring some stuff here. I could also make some stuff, and so instead of going out to eat, we can just have our meeting and snack on stuff.
It could be very, very, very busy on Main Street still at that time.
They have a parade just before our meeting.
So there is a concern about having it here and dealing with that.
And of course, that's gonna be the night with everybody
Is it the night
with
of
floors
the
in
zombie
town.
pub crawl, or is it tonight?
And that's the
The-
zombie cook.
The
That's the Anuga Halloween parade,
Oh, yeah, that's gonna be insane.
and that's always really big.
I, for one, am fine having it at night.
That'd be chill.
Max is on board.
And other people who maybe are somewhat regular but aren't here tonight, but how do we feel about maybe what their opinion would be? Pretty positive that they wouldn't mind going all the way out there if they're already
We
coming all
could
the way
always
here.
throw together a carpool.
Wait, why can't mom come next to me?
She has Halloween party. Your cousin, her cousin, someone's having.
What would you like to come to my
For
place
a couple hours.
Yeah. It'd be, pretty open-ended, but I mean, I'm sure I could throw some stuff on the smoker and.
How many times do you press from 9K out of Buffalo?
A lot, let me tell you.
You watch the sun come up and sunset?
Pretty much, yeah.
I'll bring a Halloween snack.
You bring a Halloween snack? Is it brains?
Well, actually, my wife was gonna make some eyeballs for us.
Why don't you make that prime rib you're gonna make on Sunday? So
Hey,
everyone,
but you said chicken wings, now I want chicken.
everyone's okay with
I'm thinking teriyaki chicken wings.
Oh,
I am thinking of throwing on some ribs on the smoker, and I was thinking of throwing on the prime rib.
you give master an idea of what you'd like me to make her and bring.
And my wife would say she would make some eyeballs that are made with fudge in the middle.
And your wife would be okay with all of it.
She actually, I asked her already if that would be okay. The kids are going to be gone that weekend or that night because they've got things to do and places to go. They will not be there. So if people wouldn't mind,
I think that would be great.
if you'd like to write down the address and give it to you.
We'll get you out to.
Yeah, we could do that too.
Oh, yeah,
Why don't we do that? Yeah, why don't you do that? Then
So it's decided, we're good with
I think
that?
it's a great idea. And if anyone is interested in carpooling, I have no problem.
Same here, of course, too,
I
absolutely.
was gonna say, that might be one message to get out.
Yep.
Everybody who's not here.
Yep.
That if they wanna go, that.
I'll do it before early afternoon of that Saturday. I promise. I know I'm terrible about posting the meetings.
I'll
I know words.
But
Thank you.
it was just a thought, it would be fun, I'm not sure of all the activities besides our meeting we could come up with.
Get horseshoes?
Oh, we could come up with some ideas.
Oh, I'm
We could
already,
make a mummy.
What time of
Oh,
day?
we should play a mommy game.
well, we could make it earlier.
It's gotta be earlier because it's gonna be dark by that time.
Let's say.
It's gonna be getting dark. That's another couple weeks away.
We
Can
could-
we come in costume?
You know what, if we wanna come in costume, we can.
I don't have a costume.
It would be costume optional, you got time to think of something.
Yeah, we
If
got 2
you-
weeks to come up with crazy
Or
ideas.
Jake from State Farm.
I don't care if somebody comes as a creepy clown, somebody, people seem to get really weirded by that.
I will show you if you come as a creepy clown.
You'll what?
I promise I will leave my
It's in
clown
self-defense. When you come as a creepy clown, I'll kill you.
Thank you.
No,
I know, we're
exfoliate
kind of
people who
rocking the
pretend to be clowns.
same similar look, but
I know.
they're very boppy, I like
Yours
it.
is better.
But they're
Yours
very
is cute.
That's creepy clown things.
Your hair's just really thin.
They're just.
Her hair is beautiful, Max.
Thanks.
I like your hair. That's
Thanks
why
for
they're
having me.
different, is because yours
So
is
would that
thin.
work for you?
I think it works great. Why don't you text me
Meeting adjourned.
and give
Are you
me,
calling
You
out?
guys merge my
We are
podcast.
not.
Okay.
we are
Look
not
at this. I can
tonight.
put my
I got
on
an
my
offender
phone.
visit this afternoon. I was on my way to pick up Max from
Wait till the
Kayla's house,
testosterone hits you.
and
Then you'll be a chrome dome.
I was yielding
Don't
like
say
I was
that.
supposed to for the
I
motorcycle,
know, right?
and the jerk face behind me ran me.
I guess it's not.
Bam,
Well,
whoa. And it's been a rough week for
and
me.
so I have to
My
do something with that. like,
cohort
five
has been
inches
out
of
all
hair
week,
in the back.
so I've been doing
Pulled out,
everybody's
it's
job,
and then it's
including
kind
mine,
of-
and overdid it. So
Who's on that thingy?
I am having surgery.
Do we have a guest tonight? Did we?
No, Lisa tried to come on, but she didn't get a good connection, so I saw her call on and I'm like,
I was afraid I had too much.
I'm not
going.
taking good enough care of myself.
So come hungry.
Come
We'll have
hungry, got it.
We'll have lots to eat.
isn't it?
There will be lots. I like cooking stuff.
It's getting tired of
I'm on my
hair sitting
worms
like that.
and dirt.
If I put it in the high point.
Are you sure about these?
Yeah.
Are you happy with me?
I'm very hungry.
Whole group? Oh my gosh. Stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like I'm happy to watch. I'm always happy to.
I've been pushing the fridge and something.
Actually,
you cut that though.
Give me 1 second. Let me
I
grab this.
got to. I was just.
Wait, what?
Wait, what? I just want to talk to you.
Why do you always, wait, why can't you talk to me and Amy? Is that?
I just did, didn't I? Haven't I talked with you too the whole
Do
time?
you wanna go start the car?
It's a guy thing to do with. You said my hair wasn't much, well, my hair wasn't much longer than this, I mean, got out here or something, but even getting just that much off, it seems nicer. It was easier to use like the brush with it, because it didn't take a little much, yeah.
Yeah, oh, I had some wrestling matches and tons of, just yeah, calling, yeah, calling or something. Yeah, not anymore.
Do you feel nice doing this all the time?
I do, I just, yeah.
I mean, you actually.
It's nice. Yeah, I just, yeah, I actually feel like, some, way you could lift, this, that thing, the hair layer this way and this way, because, definitely before I kind of felt like I had to really, take a blow dry and flat iron it, but, to be honest, I would, like, just to put it on, so that it would stick. Just because I felt that it needed that, but not anymore. So, yeah, you look like a girl.
In fact, I'm just like,
Yes, it has, yeah.
it's just,
Look in the mirror and
like, okay, why, I can squeeze it down the headband, wait, no, that's not gonna help.
right, yeah. Yeah, I don't think I can pull off that, like, late 80s, early 90s, like Andre Hennessy look.
Oh, yeah.
He had long hair back then, I really didn't. Yeah, right. Oh, I have none. Something.
I really didn't.
Oh, right, yeah. This is huge. Huge hair. Yeah. Yeah, and then it's like, no. Yeah. I lose at the end. This hair feels like a
What?
So I want you to go. Maybe I'll like kids want to, it's like, what's how you do that yesterday? And, that frame.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, together. My daughter initially wanted to help me put it together, but then like 10 o'clock rolled around. I'm tired. Should I do this in the morning? I said yes.